Hi, John here from the Historic Game Shop. In this video I'm going to discuss board games played by the Romans. There are a large number of game boards scratched into Roman pavements, as well as archaeological finds of boards and many finds of game counters and dice on Roman sites. So it is fair to assume that the Romans were very enthusiastic players of both board and dice games. But despite this, and that the Romans were very keen writers, no rules that might have been written down have survived. However, these enthusiastic game-playing Romans did occasionally write down descriptions of how famously they had won a game, or indeed how they'd lost. These fragments of information have allowed the reconstruction of the rules for 3 games, together with 2 further games whose rules have survived through time. The game being played here is 5 lines, and is using coloured glass counters, a common form of gaming counter found on Roman sites. We will return to 5 and 11 lines later, but first the 2 games whose rules have survived. These are 3 Menmorris, probably dating back over 2,000 years, and 9 Menmorris, which is first known from about 100 AD in a Mediterranean area. Neither have known Latin names, but have remained known to different peoples in Europe since Roman times, acquiring their current names in the 15th or 16th centuries in Britain. I will discuss the rules for these games in the video on board games of the 11th to 13th centuries. Duodecim Scripta, or Ilia, sometimes also known as Tabula, has a history stretching back to the days of the late Roman Republic, and is the ancestor of what we now know as backgammon. It is likely, though, that the board was known as tabula, and that a range of games was played on it. This is true of what became known as tables in the medieval period. The transition from the 3-row board to the 2-row board, and then the advent of tables in the medieval period as one of the most important games of the period, will be dealt with in a separate video. Now, let's see how the game of 5 lines is going. The game is of ancient Greek origin, where it was known as pentagrammai. It was adopted by the Romans, and a larger version, 11 lines, appeared over time. 5 lines is a simple race game where the counters are moved anti-clockwise on the roll of a single die, with each player having the aim of getting all 5 of their counters onto the middle square on the opposite side of the player's opening position. These 2 central squares are called the sacred line, and the first player to get all their counters onto their half of the sacred line is the winner. It is suggested that 11 lines has the same rules, but is played with 3 dice and has 3 sacred lines at positions 3, 6 and 9. We will return to see the conclusion to this game a little later on, but first I want to discuss the last of the Roman games that has playable rules. This is Ludus Latrunculorum, the game of the little soldiers, or brigands, also known as Latrunculi. This game was possibly the most popular, certainly the most strategic, and one for which many attempts of reconstructing the rules have been made. The elements of the game that have been argued over most are whether there is a starting position or not, and the nature of the method of capture. It is agreed that capture is custodial, and it is likely that this method of capture was borrowed a few centuries later from Nefertafel in northern Europe, and by Siger in Egypt. Fragments of wooden boards have been found on Roman forts across Europe, and vary in size from 7 by 7 squares to 9 by 10 squares. The rules we suggest are as follows. The board is empty to begin with, and the 2 players place their men on the board alternately 2 at a time to form their armies. This leads to more variation in successive games, as well as having the potential for making the games more strategic. Where each player's armies are positioned can make a huge difference to how the game is played out. Movement is 1 square orthogonally, that is along the rows and columns, although there is a possible move suggested whereby a man may jump over another. Capture is custodial, whereby a man is captured if surrounded on 2 orthogonal sides by opposing men. At this point, he is turned over to show that he is captured. All counters have 2 sides, one marked, the other blank. The player with the captured man then has a chance to free him by capturing one of the 2 men on either side. If this is possible, then the captor is turned over and the captured man is set free. If this is not possible, then the captured man comes off the board. The game is over when one player admits defeat, even if they have a small number of men left on the board. Now back to the game of 5 lines, which is coming towards a conclusion, with both sides having counters on the sacred line. It is likely that many Romans, but especially Roman soldiers, carried pouches of counters and dice with them as part of their everyday apparel. Boards may well have been communal, certainly those carved into pavements, while those playing came to a game with their own counters. Board and dice games were most probably an important part of social activity in the Roman world, and what we know of Roman games is probably only a fraction of what they played. I hope that you have enjoyed this short video. These Roman games, as well as many other games, dice and playing cards, can be found on our website.